Welcome back to Supremely Black Podcast. Now, this is a topic that I think is going to draw a lot of attention right here. Now, it is stating that the African American community, Black Americans, are the ones that are being targeted by disinformation ahead of the election. Now, if you follow the channel and already subscribe, thank you. If you're new, make sure you subscribe. Now, this is where I'm coming from because I broke this down in the previous video, is that with this particular election, I think this is the most undecided that voters have been from both sides, right? So I don't think that the timing of this is just at random. I think it's very strategic. It's because tonight, if you're not aware, is the presidential election the presidential debate versus Trump and Joe Biden. With this report coming out, I think a few days ago, about that it was 40 million plus that maybe America's talking about disinformation ahead of the election. Now, remember what I was saying, they're playing chess, not checkers. It's a back and forth. I think this is the results of people not knowing and them spreading certain things that, some bullshit out there. We all know that. But here is something that's really important. Check out how they're actually phrasing it and just tell me of what you actually think.
Saying that tens of millions of Americans are being targeted with a ton of disinformation in online black spaces ahead of the 2024 presidential election. It highlights three significant threats to black voter engagement in November, including getting people to not care about voting or the election at all. President Biden's broken promises, real and, by the way, made up, and stoking divisions amongst black voters via certain influencers who knowingly and unknowingly spread disinformation, like, for instance, Candace Owens, who has millions of followers on various platforms. She said blatantly inaccurate things, like, by the way, vaccines cause a, quote, explosion of childhood cancer, and that the Uvalde shooter who killed 19 children was transgender.
Okay, so now you see why I say that it's the politics within the politics of how they put out certain information. Now, does Candace Owens say some things for shock value that are untrue? Absolutely. Honestly, I don't think that there isn't anyone that's a reporter, journalist, etc., even myself, that has said something incorrectly. Some people go back to correct it. Some people don't, because at the end of the day, they're looking for the ratings. So sometimes bad news is good news. Any publicity is good publicity. But I don't think that by any stretch of the reason is that for them to say Candace Owens, to me, if you're looking at a black audience that would catch white people's attention, you would go to Candace Owens. She's a black face that may speak to them and be more relatable to them than she would be within our own communities if we're just keeping it real. So for them to point out her gives me the indication that they're trying to eliminate the bias, but this seems a little biased to me to say that they're misleading black people on their platforms, because not just Candace Owens, there's a lot of big spaces that they had mentioned in this space, Breakfast Club, to mention a few, right? But what makes them say that it's just the black people leading these podcasts in these spaces that are providing misinformation? Do you really think that that's true?
NBC's Marquise Francis just dropped a story on NBCnews.com for us and is joining us now with more on this. Break this all down for us, Marquise, if you can, and what more you found in this report.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. Disinformation is something that people talk incessantly, seemingly, about online or in person amongst their friends or whatnot. But they don't talk often about what is it and how is it impacting people. So this report out by Onyx Impact touted as the first of its kind to really understanding disinformation through online black communities. And they identified half a dozen core online networks that are reaching or targeting specifically black Americans. And they named gateway influencers and platforms, far-right activists, and media outlets, the black manosphere, black extreme nativists and separatists, health skeptics, and foreign actors. And they included a bunch of different examples, as you mentioned, Candace Owens just before, even the Fresh and Fit podcast. These are places that people go to for information, but when the information is not true and inaccurate, it has a devastating effect.
Now, it doesn't matter of where the information comes from. If it's wrong, it's wrong. I don't care what ethnicity of the people is that made the platform, delivered the information, etc. If you said something that was incorrect, I think you should be man or woman enough to come back and right your wrong in regards to that. But again, so since they're focusing on making it a race thing, of course, like I've been telling you, that's going to be the key pivot points. But with it specifically being black podcasts or black spaces that they feel like is being targeted, I think to myself, why do they feel that way? It's because I've been around watching YouTube and things like that before I even had one. And this is the first time that I've ever heard that during an election time frame, they're looking to see of what's being misprinted online when we can actually see back and forth that go on between them in different platforms from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, you name it. They can provide you with misinformation all of the time and nobody really corrects it. Honestly, a lot of the ads that they even have that are targeting the people that they're going against has a lot of misinformation in it if you do your due diligence and look into it. So again, I just think it's a little funny that they're worried about the black spaces and the information that's getting put into it, whether that's from podcasts, TikTok, Facebook, it doesn't matter. It's open information that they can no longer control. And I think now that they've lost control of the narrative that they were able to push, it's now becoming, hey, these black people may be getting misled. Let's put this on the news. Let's get this in front of them so they can start thinking like, oh, wait, maybe this person was lying. Do your homework.
Identify the misinformation and the problems. What can be done about it, and how much does Onyx actually think this is going to influence voters one way or the other come November?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in this report, they actually offer strategic guidance in which to combat this. Normally, I would think, okay, you run away, right? But they're actually saying, no, engage with these platforms. They offered actually several key ways to engage, engaging with them, not just before an election is coming up, but consistently. Also identifying trusted messengers and discrediting bad actors, which is super important. And overall, aggressively countering that disinformation. I actually also spoke to the CEO, and she has something to say about that as well.
Black voters are likely less susceptible to many disinformation narratives given their deserved higher levels of skepticism in institutions and government overall. But just like other communities, when disinformation is targeted and sophisticated and comes from messengers with standing, it can be incredibly effective and dangerous.
Yeah, and so this report and its findings are hoping to inform us as Americans, as people who are actively engaging in our democracy. And one of the things that I also found in my research is the fact that Black Americans actually over-index when it comes to social media in this age where everything is put behind a paywall. Right. Oftentimes, Black Americans are getting their information from YouTube and from Facebook. And so when that information is not vetted and not actually correct, it can really have such a large impact.
So when you talk about engagement, when you talk about combating it, who's doing it? Us as citizens, all of us?
Yeah.
Black, white, brown, no matter what color, engaging in disinformation and fighting back?
Engaging and holding accountable.
Holding accountable, speaking facts.
If you listen to a platform regularly, and they don't do this all the time, but they have someone on that platform who is spewing disinformation, it's all of our responsibility to actually combat that and say, hey, that's not okay.
Speaking facts to truth.
Absolutely.
Truth to non-facts. Yes, got it. Okay, Marquise Francis, thank you.
All right, so just to finish up this conversation, like I was telling you, I think that it's important to do your own due diligence, research, see what policies actually fit if you are somebody that is planning on voting. Don't allow MSNBC, Fox News, CNN, no matter who it is, just to take their word for it and just go with it, because you have to understand that with it both being Democrat, Republican, it's money behind it. So it's always going to be somebody that they either favor or don't favor. It's going to be some biased or unbiased. Both of them are going to lie. That's just part of politics. That's just part of the world. People do that. But what I don't want is for people to think as if that it's just the black spaces and the black people. And for me, how I took it is that with them knowing that by studies and research is that black people are overly consumed with social media, it shows me that they feel as if that there really isn't anything that they can't push out as an agenda that wouldn't catch our attention, because we are on social media a lot based off of the numbers that they have is that black people consume more social media than any other race, which actually plays into the bigger factors, because even though there are some things that are systematically put into place that have hindered us from being able to progress as we should, what I took from that is that the biggest call out is that while we're out researching information, looking to see who's coming to save us, the key to it is nobody. Like, as we speak right now, there is over 400 or 500 black media spaces, big media spaces, that was not allowed or did not pass the clearance or denied the opportunity to be at the debate. Now, that may not matter to people that's not into politics, so be it. But this is what I also think about it, is that we shouldn't be asking CNN, Fox, or anybody else, grab your phone, grab your laptop, talk with somebody that has a channel, talk with somebody that has grown a channel successfully, ask them of how you can get it done. You can easily get into the black media space. It no longer has to be that you have to get a job at one of these major corporations and follow their agenda, because honestly, just like with anything else that you do in the world, if you're not the owner of it, you're going to be taking orders from somebody. So I think the most important part that I would want us to walk away with is that don't rely on these media spaces. Create your own media space. And the same way that I do mine, if it's something that I agree with, that I know for a fact has people's attention, I speak on it. But it's not just a black people space thing, it's a black people consume. And so whichever network chooses to say, hey, this 40 million people are being distracted, this 40 million people are being provided with misinformation, you should take that as a hint, is that we're one, over consuming, and two, when it comes to having your own, you don't have to ask anybody for anything. You simply grab your laptop, grab your phone, grab your people, whoever you're gonna have a conversation with, create the content that you want, and just do it with integrity. Let me know what you think. Do you feel as if that the black spaces are provided with misinformation, or do you think that this is a plot because one side feels like they're losing leverage, and the only way that they can grasp people's attention is to say that this group of people is getting misinformation by the masses? Is it true, or do you think they're reaching just to kind of retake control of the narrative? Let me know what you think. Long live CC. I'm out.